A young girl's pregnancy rumor turns into a deadly secret, leading to a brutal murder by the Jordan River. Annie Kasprzak, just 15, was found lifeless, and what followed was a shocking investigation that unraveled lies, jealousy, and betrayal, one that stunned a community and exposed dark secrets hidden close to home. On the morning of March 11, 2012, a call to 911 sent officers rushing to the Jordan River just outside Draper, Utah. A jogger, having spotted pools of blood and a shoe near the riverbank, initially assumed it might be an animal injury. However, the sight of blood quickly raised alarm, and when authorities arrived, they confirmed the blood was human. As officers canvassed the area, their search intensified. What they discovered next would send ripples through the entire community. On the opposite side of the river, a body was found floating. It was immediately clear the victim had suffered significant violence. The body, later identified as 15-year-old Annie Kasprzak, was lifeless and severely swollen, having been submerged for hours. The signs of trauma were unmistakable. Annie's face, unrecognizable due to blunt force injuries, was a haunting image of the brutality she had endured. Her injuries were not the result of a single blow, but repeated, violent strikes, indicating she had been attacked with ferocity. Detectives immediately launched a full-scale investigation. The police were determined to identify the victim and gather any evidence that could explain how she ended up in the river. A press conference was held, with law enforcement hoping the public might be able to offer crucial information. As the hours passed, forensic testing confirmed what investigators had feared. The victim was indeed Annie Kasprzak, a 15-year-old girl whose life had been violently cut short. Annie's disappearance quickly drew the attention of the police. Just hours after the discovery of the body, investigators realized Annie had been missing for some time, and her family became central to the investigation. Veronica Kasprzak, Annie's mother, reported her daughter as a runaway, having found a note Annie had left behind. In the note, Annie wrote that she was going to California to escape her problems, planning to run away with her boyfriend, Christopher Bagshaw. But, as the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Annie's disappearance was not as simple as a teenage girl running away. The police began digging deeper into Annie's past, revealing a much darker and more complex story. Annie had spent much of her childhood in foster homes, moving from one family to another before being adopted by Veronica and Dennis Kasprzak. This troubled upbringing, marked by emotional turmoil and instability, was a key factor in her decision-making and behavior. Investigators learned Annie had struggled with emotional issues for years, which likely played a role in the choices she made leading up to her death. The investigators then shifted their focus to Annie's relationship with Christopher Bagshaw. Interviews with friends and family revealed that Annie had developed an intense attachment to Christopher. It became apparent her feelings for him were deep, and investigators learned of a troubling rumor that Annie had told her friends she was pregnant with Christopher's child, however, was later disproven. Annie was not pregnant, but the emotional weight of this rumor was significant. It gave investigators insight into Annie's emotional state and helped them understand why she might have been so desperate to escape her life. As investigators delved deeper into Annie Kasprzak's life, one name kept emerging: Christopher Bagshaw. Annie's journals revealed an intense obsession with him. Her writings were filled with references to Christopher, hinting at a consuming attachment that many of her friends noted. Rumors of her being pregnant with Christopher's child also circulated among her classmates, creating further complexity in the case. The police turned their attention to Christopher, hoping that understanding his relationship with Annie could unlock the mystery surrounding her disappearance. Initially, Christopher denied any involvement in Annie's disappearance. He claimed he had been at his grandmother's house the night she went missing. providing an alibi that seemed plausible at first. However, as investigators continued to probe, inconsistencies began to surface in his statements. Chris had told his friends and family about the pregnancy rumor, but when questioned by the authorities, it became clear that there was no truth to it. Annie was not pregnant. This revelation raised more questions than answers, as it appeared that Christopher had fabricated the story. After hours of intense questioning, Christopher's facade began to crack. Under pressure, he finally admitted to inventing the story about another boyfriend, LJ, in an effort to deflect suspicion and hide his own feelings of jealousy and anger. The truth began to emerge. Chris confessed that he had lured Annie to the Jordan Parkway under the guise of running away together. The situation took a dark turn. Enraged by Annie's lies and desperate to end their relationship, Chris attacked her brutally. He struck her repeatedly with a shovel, aiming for her face until she stopped moving. Chris's confession provided critical details that the investigation had been lacking. His emotional breakdown during the interrogation exposed the depth of his inner turmoil. The investigators finally had the answers they had been searching for, and the mystery of Annie's death was, in part, solved. Chris's confession not only brought clarity to the tragic event, but also unveiled the emotions and rage that had driven him to commit such a heinous act. As investigators delved deeper into the case, they began to unravel a web of lies and deception, revealing that Chris Bagshaw was not the only one attempting to cover up Annie's murder. His close friend Spencer had initially provided misleading statements to the police, further complicating the investigation. Spencer claimed that he had witnessed Annie's nosebleed while at his house the night she disappeared. However, under further questioning, Spencer admitted that he had not actually seen the nosebleed. He had simply repeated what Chris had told him. This revelation raised serious doubts about Spencer's role in the cover-up and made the investigation more complex. Chris's family also played a significant part in the deception. His grandmother, Wilma, claimed that Chris had been at her house on the night of Annie's death. This false alibi seemed to shield Chris from suspicion, but as the investigation continued, discrepancies emerged. Phone records later confirmed that Chris had made calls from a blocked number, which contradicted the statements made by his family and raised further suspicions about his involvement. The phone records painted a picture that didn't align with the stories being told by Chris's supporters. The breakthrough in the investigation came when Joanna Franklin, a key witness, came forward with crucial information. Joanna revealed that she had seen Chris and another man, John, shortly after Annie's murder. Her testimony provided investigators with the missing pieces of the puzzle, confirming Chris's involvement in the crime. Joanna's statement exposed the extent of the cover-up and the lies that had been surrounding the case. With her help, investigators were able to piece together the truth, and the web of deception that had been protecting Chris began to unravel. The lies were exposed, and the truth about Chris's role in Annie's death became undeniable. The investigation reached its climactic point when Chris Bagshaw, after weeks of lies and misdirection, finally confessed to his role in the murder of Annie Kasprzak. Under the weight of relentless questioning, Chris admitted that he had lured Annie to the Jordan Parkway, deceiving her into believing they would run away together. Once at the parkway, Chris's emotions overtook him. In a fit of rage, driven by jealousy and a desire to end the relationship, he attacked Annie with a shovel. He struck her in the face repeatedly until she stopped moving, leaving her to die in that desolate area. Chris's confession brought clarity to a case that had been shrouded in confusion and falsehoods. The detectives now had the missing pieces to secure his arrest. His detailed account of the events, coupled with the physical evidence gathered from the crime scene, made it clear that this was no accident. It was a brutal, calculated act of violence. Chris's admission not only confirmed his involvement, but also highlighted the emotional turmoil and rage that had led to the crime. Once Chris confessed, the legal process began to move swiftly. He was charged with first-degree murder, a crime so heinous that it would come with significant consequences. Despite being only 14 years old at the time of the murder, Chris's actions could not be excused by his age. The severity of the crime, coupled with his deceptive actions, led to a sentence of 15 years to life in prison. The community, still reeling from the shock of Annie's death, saw this sentencing as the final step in bringing justice to her family and the people who knew her. Though the case was officially closed with Chris's confession and sentencing, the emotional scars left by Annie's death continued to affect those involved. Chris's guilt and emotional state were brought into sharp focus during the trial, but they did little to lessen the pain of his crime. His sentencing marked the end of the legal battle, but for Annie's family, the pain of their loss would linger far longer. Though the case officially closed with Chris Bagshaw's confession and sentencing, it remained a subject of ongoing reflection for the investigators involved. After Chris's conviction, the police took time to reflect on the investigation that had spanned years, from the discovery of Annie's body to the final confession that secured Chris's fate. Each step, each lead, and each twist in the case was analyzed and reviewed as they revisited the entirety of the investigation. The final steps in the case involved a thorough review of phone records, witness statements, and physical evidence. While Chris's confession had provided a clear resolution, it also highlighted the complexity of the investigation. At every stage, the police had faced challenges, false leads, deceptive statements, and a lack of physical evidence at key moments. Yet, through persistence, attention to detail, and a commitment to uncovering the truth, they had eventually pieced the puzzle together. It was Chris's own emotional breakdown and confession that provided the final piece of the puzzle, but it came only after a long, meticulous process. The case left an indelible mark on both the community and the investigators. While the conviction brought some sense of closure, the emotional toll of solving such a brutal crime lingered. For the police officers who had worked tirelessly, the case had not just been a matter of following the evidence, but also dealing with the emotional weight of Annie's death and the loss it represented for those who knew her. The crime left behind a profound sense of unease. It was a reminder that even in the quietest of neighborhoods, the capacity for such violence could exist. Though the legal process had concluded, the emotional scars remained. The investigation had revealed more than just the tragic murder of a young girl. It had also exposed the deep emotional struggles that led to such a violent act. For the investigators, the resolution of the case had been hard-earned, but it did little to erase the lasting impact of what they had uncovered. The memory of Annie's life and the brutal way it ended would resonate with those involved for years to come.